Hi, I'm Mike Reynolds, a longtime Mamaroneck resident. Today I'm speaking with Luis Quiros under the heading of Pathology of an Incident. Luis has lived in Mamaroneck longer than I have. How long have you been here, my friend?
I've been in the area for about a little over 40 years, 42, 43 years.
Okay.
Two out of my three kids went to Chatsworth, and my youngest one went to Central.
Okay. High school guys, too?
High school, Hammocks, high school and
Ah.
college and graduate degrees and
Okay.
beyond.
All right. You were born in August of 1945. That was the month that the nuclear era actually officially began. Perhaps it's a metaphor for your life, which has been, somewhat combative, like to blow up things in the system, in the sense of making things better for various communities, people of color. Your life's work has been in that sense. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been looking to do and still have to achieve?
Well, I think you did it good. You placed it right, and the word metaphor is perfect in the sense that when I was born in 1945, I didn't ask to be born. None of us did. So it's not something I asked for, and what I was born into in 1945 was violence. I grew up in violence. The 1945 was about 9 years before the Brown case, the Brown versus the Board of Ed case.
Right.
And because it was 1954, doesn't mean the racism and the violence stopped. It didn't. It kept going on for many years into 1960s and 70s. So I grew up in that environment, and the metaphor is that I had to figure out why this type of violence existed. My father worked in a factory, chocolate factory, great chocolate factory, making chocolates, and I worked there during the summer. However, the owners were German Jews, and they were Holocaust survivors, and seeing the number, the tattoo on their wrists was really painful
I'm sure.
for me. And here I am, a one-digit number, 4, 5, 6. And little by little, I started to get interested in the war. So World War II and the Jews and everything that happened. And I could go fast forward to today, and we're still there. And so the atomic bomb, which and the killing of innocent people while they're in the kitchen, in the bathroom, taking a shower, kids in the classroom, it has affected me because for me, that is not an option. Japan, I mean, again, I don't want to get into World War II so much. Japan bombed a military post, not New York City or
Right.
LA.
That's
You
true.
know, we could debate this verbatim, but forever. But I was born into this violence, and what I wanted to do. Eventually, I learned that everything that happened was going to be a study for me. I That's why I called these programs the pathology of an incident. Too many things happen, and they call it an incident. But I'm addicted to finding out it's not an incident. Why did this happen? How could it avoid it? What's the history behind this? And finding the history and the sociology behind it was something that was very important to me.
So your mother was from Puerto Rico. Your father's from Venezuela. You grew up in Harlem. How did those three things kind of come together and influence what you've just spoken about? That
Well,
you want to be involved. It's
I
in
want
your
to be
it's in
involved.
your heart.
Right. I'll start with my mother. My mother came to this country for a lot of reasons. But one of the main ones during her time, around 17 years old, she was Puerto Rico was having a, a sterilizing teenagers and women up to 25 if they were poor and brown
Really? Wow.
and black, and that ended up in the UN in 1972, and it was a genocide. Um, outside of that, and that needs to be enlarged because those sterilizations still happen in Lincoln Hospital, and the high rate of sterilization around black and brown women is still a problem today. It's still current events. However, my mother just loved the island. She loved being Puerto Rican. She loved the music. She just embraced it, and that embracement and the music and the food, great cook. Uh, and she was a pianist too, played the piano and could. It was a my mother was very romantic in that
Okay.
sense. So that's and an attractive woman. Even my friends used to say, "Boy, your mother's really good looking," you know. So and I remember
Okay.
these things, you know.
Okay.
You don't forget. What are you guys talking about? Leave me alone, you know. But then I encouraged the violence in the west side of Manhattan. I didn't grow up on the west side, the east side, where it was largely Puerto Rican. Um, I grew up on the west side, where it was predominantly white. I saw too many white kids, and by too many, I'm not exaggerating. Every time I saw a white kid, I thought I was going to get beat up, cursed at, and told that your mother came here to get welfare and all these things that I ended up experiencing, and it was a horrible feeling for me trying to avoid white people. You get abused by anybody with a brown suit. Eventually any brown suit, you're going to walk on the other side of the street. So I avoided sneak into. You know what it is to sneak into elementary school when less whites are around, and which way am I going to go? So I experienced all that, and I had to find out why, and it made sound. You can take this any way you want, but I'm no not to hold back on my words. I just wanted to be smarter than any white person I knew. You know, I took it personally. And I studied a lot. And
So again, your your calling card, your resume, your life's work. So you're an advocate, an activist, you're a professor, a book author. We have two books here, another's mine, and Justice Unplugged. You've been involved in academia for a while. Tell us a little bit about your background there. And again, was that, you just said you wanted to be the smartest guy around, so that's what got you into that realm?
yeah, well, I'll go back to my father. My father came from Caracas, highly educated.
Okay.
He was part of the elite family, Caracas. His father, my grandfather, had a PhD in uh, political science, something that my youngest son has also a PhD in
Okay.
that area. So he came highly educated, and he used to criticize this country because he ended up going to City College for engineering, and in those days, City College was the epitome of engineering schools, uh, along with Cooper Union and other schools. Um, and he used to tell me that what they taught, the advanced math, they taught him at City College, he had in high school in Caracas,
Really? Okay.
you know. And yeah, vice versa. So I get from him also the educational component also,
Right.
and I get the political sense of it. Learning the word of who Simon Bolivar was, from my grandmother on his side, um, and the factory bothered me a lot because I remember him running around, and all I could hear was the jingling of the keys on his pocket because he used to open it up and close the factory, open it up and
Mm.
for 20, 25, 30
Really?
years.
Okay.
And I said to myself, I ain't going to do that. I do not. I do. There is no leisure time here. I never see him. He's always busy. He's, trying to make ends meet. Um, so right away, because I'm a student of life, without knowing that I was such a person, I knew early that ain't for me. This is the people are not born to work. It is not a solution to life to work. It has other purposes.
In that sense, you're lucky, right? Because your life's work you've been passionate about. It's been in your heart, in your soul. Um, other people are not so fortunate. You know, you've got a job, you're good at something, you make a lot of money. That does allow you to, spend time with your family, engage in a couple of things that might be dear to your own heart. Um, what do you say to people like that? How do they go through? Because you haven't had to do it. That's been a blessing of your life.
Well, a blessing of my life, I would say that I'm really, really proud that I'm Latino and that I was born in an era where it was hard being Latino. We have issues now on television, sports, you're trying to watch a good program on TV and everything is a commercial about immigrants. Who wants to let them out, who wants to kick them out. You know, uh, Being Puerto Rican is not a new problem to me because we are citizens. But I was treated as an immigrant. So what was mine, I didn't have access to. I was told that uh, Lincoln freed me, and the white person beating me up would tell me that God freed them. And these words, when you hear them, and you're under, being plummeted and fists, and told go back to your country, I know those feelings. And my blessing is that I wasn't 7 feet tall, 300 pounds, where I can beat them up. The only way I'm going to get myself out of this if I studied and learned. So I was that's not luck because it's I didn't ask to be born. The situation I made the best out of the situation by wanting to be smart. And the guys that I hung around with, except on basketball teams, I played basketball literally every day in the street and wherever I could find a game. Outside of a street basketball game, um, I always hung around with very, very, very smart people. My best friend went to an Irishman, and at that, he went to Peter Stuyvesant High School. Anybody knows about high school, you know, my friend went there, and they would carry a book around, and we would talk about these situations. My topics of choice during those times were always sociological, political.
Right.
I didn't go around. I don't want to talk about politics or religion. Yeah, I want to talk about religion because I went to a Catholic school, and I got beat up there, and the brothers and the nuns knew I was getting beat up for being Puerto Rican, and they did nothing about it. So, yeah, I do not avoid monsters in the room. I do not dodge that.
Okay.
So I had that curiosity, and and to go back to your question, uh, that I made that answer to your question. What do I tell other people? Is what I did with my kids. I told my kids when you go to university, when you go to, I mean, and they went to a very good elementary school and high school here in the area. They play sports and they were known. Uh, well, when they got to go to college, I told them all, you do not go to college to be educated and to find a job. College is not to find a job. College is about to being informed as to who you are, what you want to do, how you can solve the 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 privilege that you have had of being alive and being physically healthy, and using that to the advantage of society, and you get people to pay you for that. Um, and it's worked out. All three have their graduate degrees and beyond. And I don't want to talk about them so much, but that's what I did. That's how I mentored people that I mentored with, and I taught at Fordham and other places.
Right. You had for a
Graduated
long time, though.
undergraduate.
You told me like 20 years or something
Yeah,
to that
over
effect?
20 years at Fordham and other places. But the important thing is finding what you love. Now, here's the key to the formula, to my formula. I knew that I could not take the advice that I was going to give my kids. I wrote my life off and said, I'm done as far as trying to have what I wanted my kids to have. That I'm not going to inherit. I didn't inherit. I'm not going to inherit anything but bills and headaches.
Okay.
So I'm going to do whatever I can. Pick up bottles in the street, which I did. Got me through high school. I worked at Columbia University's School of Surgeons and in the cafeteria. Met some very famous doctors there that became doctors later on. I hustled and I packed tomatoes at 2 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the morning at Hunts Point, and then went to graduate school and then had a full-time job. You know, I have to be employed. I don't know what it is if I'm not working and making money.
Right.
But I knew that money had to be spent on on having a life that my kids could have, not my own life. I enjoyed it. I had a great life. I mean, living near the Apollo and the music and you know, when people used to ask me, how do you live in Harlem? I love Harlem. How do you not? I feel safer in Harlem than walking in Scarsdale. People can stare at me anyway,
Okay.
So, all these questions. So what I tell other people, somebody in the first generation, in a way, there are other solutions, is what I went through, my kids aren't. And for them to get it, I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to change my pattern, change my formula. I worked in companies, all not-for-profit work, and when it came to putting money away for the pension, this is an extreme. I'm not asking people to do it. This is what's my formula. They say, how much do you want to put away in a retirement account? So unless the not-for-profit or the school or whoever was going to pay for it, I was going to put any extra money in. My extra money was to make sure that my kids could live as they should, and I couldn't. Because if I did that, you can't do both. You can't do both in this kind of economy where the taxes are a fence to separation, to separate, to create racism. Taxes, if your taxes are high enough where you live, you're also keeping away poor black and brown people. Taxes are a fence, among other things. And I wanted both. So the both, I'm doing this way. And my kid has prospered with that. On the negative side, you can't teach lived experiences in a book. I can't tell you. I tell them my lived experiences and they know it, but they'll never relate to it.
Right.
They can never say, Dad, I know what it is. Dad, I did this. You can't do that. And you can't do that in the United States because any immigrant kid that lives in the United States, they're not going to respect their parents like they had to respect the parents in the country that they came from, and other things.
What about, what you just spoke about here again in terms of transferring your experience to others, but you worked in classrooms and that's part of what you were trying to do,
Right.
I imagine, to
I
bring
did.
that. How challenging is that to bring what you know and what you've experienced to, a group of, I don't know if they're 15 or 20, depending on whether they're high school or college, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I taught college. I really didn't, teach elementary school or
Okay.
high school. I throughout my years of teaching, thousands of kids have gone through me, and I mentor them. I still in touch with them. They love my advice. They followed my advice, and I love what I was teaching. I was high in demand for graduate students too. So I live what I preach, and I preach what I live. You're not gonna see a different Lou. Oh, that's Lou at work. No, what you see in front of me now, Mike, is who I am before this. And when I go out with my kids, a few times I do, because they don't live nearby. When I do go by, they always say, "Dad, do me a favor, don't talk." Because if I hear a conversation that I don't like at another table or anything, I'm in that.
Okay. All right.
I am.
So maybe not the
there.
best dinner companion then, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Is there, again,
I
You're
was even arrested here in Marinick. You know, I was
you a crossing guard or something like that?
well, besides the crossing guard, I was just living in my house. You know, without being a crossing guard, and a police officer came up and said, "I look suspicious. Now you've been to my house. Right behind me is the high school. You know." And they want to know why I live, why I'm hanging around near a high school. And that, to make a long story short, I didn't want to tell them that's my house because they had no right asking me that question. I ended up getting arrested. It appeared in the paper, uh, which brings out another thing for society and issues of race is we live in a society in American Larchmont, where we are now, where the prices of the houses and the value they represent are totally connected to the value of our educational system. Without the educational system that we have, our houses would be worth less than half of what they are now. Education that we have here in our high school, elementary schools, have a lot to do with the quality of life and the value of our home and what we're going to retire on for those that are going to retire. And yet we have a police department now, included the commissioner now, the police officer now, and the one before, that are among the most poorly educated people I have ever met in the field. None of them even have college. None of them took a college degree. None of them that made an impact on my life for negative way. Even had courses on race. Knew nothing about race because I subpoenaed them and I deposed them in a deposition because I sued the police department. It, it's pitiful what they don't know, and that's a sense of fascism for me because I study so hard. How do you control the elite? You hire the those that enforce. They ain't so smart because smart people ain't gonna do that kind of thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's kind
That's
of how that
universal.
rolls. I mean,
That rolls,
but in the sense that, you know, you've done it differently, right? Because you didn't necessarily want to accumulate economic wealth. You've got a situation that's different. But for most people, I have a good job. I'm going to make a lot of money. I'm going to live in a fancy house. I mean, that's the American dream. And what's so wrong about that?
well, let's straighten that out. I don't think that's the American dream. I think everybody in the world would like to have that.
Okay.
What do we have? I think that's a label that people need to study. American dream. Why? My mother didn't dream that in Puerto Rico. People in France don't dream that.
Okay.
And what do we have here, Mike? We have footage in mansions that are never used. People don't eat together. They've got a mansion. They got two kids in a mansion, and nobody's using all those rooms, all that space. We're dealing with issues of affordable housing, and look at all that wasted footage. That just to say is that's why education is so important. We got to go back to why do we do what we're doing. That's an incident. That's a pathology that needs to be examined. Why buy a house you're never going to use? Now there are circumstances. If you're the chairman of the board of one of these big corporations, you need the pool, you want that, or you're an athlete. But let's call it what it is. Orient or whatever. A lot of that footage is not used. I see it when I go down Heathcote Avenue and I see these lights on. There's nobody there. And yet we're fighting for affordable housing. If we're fighting for affordable housing, that shouldn't even be an issue. How can we know? How about why isn't 100% of this nation's occupants have decent housing? There should be no such thing as a need for affordable housing. There should be no such homeless person, especially veterans, which most of them are. Too many are. Who's examining this? And let's stop making it stop making it an issue to talk about. You're responsible for this. Everybody's responsible for that.
Yeah, but I mean that's again, particularly here in this town, it's been going on for a while. I mean, you know, affordable means what? And to what?
Affordable is unaffordable.
Well, I mean, again, it's in the sense that I know that you've advocated going back now to the Hampshire Country Club, a golf course. They wanted to build housing. You said, okay, let's do this, but we have to have affordable units. Now we're in the same now we're in the same boat on Hunter Tier Lot.
Okay.
Obviously, it's been a major point of controversy. If you watch LMC Media or you attend these meetings in person, most people are against it. I mean, my sense is, my own thoughts is like, why isn't there a referendum? Why doesn't
Right.
everybody get to vote and see what's happening that way? Because
I
again,
agree with that end. Now, let's go back to Hampshire. Hampshire's
Okay.
not about affordable housing. That was never about
Okay.
affordable housing. Well, my complaint about Hampshire, there's a numerous of them, but I'll just pick two right now. We're missing out on millions and millions and millions of dollars of tax revenue if you have other housing there.
Okay.
And we're spending millions of dollars on legal fees. That between the legal fees that even my case costs the village a lot of. I ended up getting $50,000 for that case. It ended up between the legal fees and it was a lot more than that.
Sure.
And there's still another lawsuit. And look what happened. Everything that I said as a crossing guard came out. I said the crossing guards, they're not supervised well. There's not enough of them. They leave early. This particular one guy left early, gets on the bus early, and I complained about this. And less than a year after I stopped working for them, a mother and a daughter and a son get run over and killed.
Right.
This is what I mean. Nobody's studying the all they see is an ungrateful employee, me, disgruntled employee complaining about that. No, I'm not disgruntled. I want you to examine. My kids don't have to cross that street. It doesn't happen in Chatsworth as a central. Why is it happening in the school where the minority students go, where the floods occur? Why is it happening there? And what's the price you put on that also? The pathology of an incident has to be examined. And then I was also drove around in a car as a park ranger. When I was driving around in a park ranger, these idiot police officers used to tell me, if there's more than 10 people on a field by the in the hot mix, not the hot mix,
In the harbor?
in the harbor, you got to stop because they need a permit. And
What,
then,
to kick the ball around?
well, this gets worse. That would have been the best part. I wish it was that. 10 people, you need a permit. However, they're Mexicans, no more than 4.
Wow.
And the Mexicans used to hope that I was on duty. You're going to be on duty, so I wouldn't do it. And I reported that. And this is an innocent. Then they want to know, you start putting, if you alert and conscious, Michael, this is insanity what is happening here. And this lot here that they want to do across the street from the police station, that's insanity too. That must not happen. Now, here I'm saying that, and I would love to see housing. I would love to. There's a way of doing this. Between Hampshire, that club, we have all it takes. If a glass is filled to the top with water, and you want to put more water, you only have one more choice. Get rid of the glass and put another one. You got to
Right.
rebuild the thing. And that's what we have to do. And I'd like to have a referendum. Think that you just have a referendum. Let's really find out who's behind these decisions, and one that is not making money on the side for selling a lot or don't tell me there's no private deals going around here that's going to make somebody rich.
The other, all of the, that aside, the idea that you want to put affordable housing in, and I don't know what the quotients are, what the percentage is, where Mamaroneck stands vis-a-vis other local communities. That aside, trying to put something there, Okay, it's a relatively small area, but it joins Mamaroneck Avenue, which is the central part of this community. So, how long would it take to build it? What's the parking infrastructure? More people, more traffic, more safety concerns, and again, to what end? Would anybody from Mamaroneck, I guess there's a lottery system, would anyone from Mamaroneck even get an apartment there or a small percentage of it? So what is the real benefit to that per se?
Right.
I'm not opposed to affordable housing. It's just like having it in a better
and
locale.
you didn't even, you
Having it in
even
a better
discuss,
locale.
you didn't even mention the ecology. You know, all these.
Well, exactly. And that's
Now we're going to have more gas around
Right,
here.
and
We got gas stations. Now we're going to have.
Right, and
Yeah,
the whole and resources being taken to go to that, as opposed to the flooding, which is the concern of many people who live here.
Absolutely. That bridge on Weberly is still hanging on. You got to go around. I had the corner at the crossing guard with the gas station at the Metro North. I can't tell you how often I had to use my asthma pills because of the fumes and the
yeah,
trucks.
that makes sense.
And
Yeah.
that would be that if you do that here, that's what's going to happen all of Mamaroneck Avenue. It was just insanity, and it's getting worse.
So do you think, though, in taking out those considerations aside, and there's others that we haven't even mentioned here, is there affordable housing here? Where do you think it should be? How do you think it should be dispersed, as the case may be?
Well, I'm not convinced that a lottery is the best way to do it. I think people that have had tenure here,
Okay.
and have had a history here. Some history goes
Right,
back
they
over
should have
100
some
years.
priority.
There are some people here that've been here over 100 years. I mean, I've been
they-
here half a century, let's
Right,
say,
sure.
But there are some people here that I know families whose last names go on forever and a day. I don't think the lottery should work. I don't think the lottery should lottery them. I think that's priority. The lottery is a word that I don't even like. The reason I don't like it because if you recall, when they started the lottery, the gambling lottery here, buying tickets for lottery, the money was supposed to be for education, public school education. It never went there. It never went there. And if you do my research, I've been fighting for attacking the funding formula for public school education because it's a distorted one. It shouldn't be based on just taxes, because I mean places that don't have expensive housing, they're not going to get any tax revenue from that, and that's what funding the public schools. It's not right. I'll say something that I've been saying it for years and years and years. The way public school goes, so will the nation. And that's the problem, among the problems that we have. That is the pinnacle of all problems stems from a lack of understanding in education.
Okay.
I came here, I was born in a situation where if not for the fact that I had to go out of my way to get educated and be smart, I would not be in front of you now. Neither would my kids have, 2 out of 3 PhDs, and neither would I be smart enough to debate anything. I would probably be part of the ridiculous comments that people make. Oh, I don't want to talk about politics or religion. Then you can't talk to anybody. As long as you talk to 2 people, the second person makes it political. If you're dating somebody, it's already political, because now you're deciding what they should know about you, what they should not. You're becoming political out of date.
Okay.
So and religion, you don't want to discuss religion? Then, go live in a hermit, go to a desert. Why do people say? Because they do not want to discuss what's substantial. How do you not have a conversation? Oh, I don't want to talk about race. Then what's wrong with you? We should be able to talk about race, class, and gender without an argument.
But Luis, most people don't want to go there. What is fundamentally
because
inside?
their education is inferior. They went to school for the wrong things. They went to school to be different than everybody else. And a lot of people want an education just to prove to themselves that they're going to be different than the otherized, that they're going to be different. A society that has no leisure time, and that's us.
Okay.
It's a sick, mentally sick, ill-deprived, uneducated community. And I go back to philosophers. I mean, I went to Union Theological Seminary where I studied. Philosophy has always been my love. Even in high school, I just love reading of philosophers. Great philosophers have said the same thing. You cannot have a society without leisure time. And work is not why we were born, because it's what we do that gets society going. And people say greater than this. The word greater, it's not that we want to be greater. We want to be developed. Everything that's great, eventually falls apart. I want to get bigger, get larger. Even human beings shrink after a certain age.
Yes, this is true.
It's about development. But if you develop yourself and try to find out why you want to be different or why you are different and what's different about me that's hurting society, that's what we're about. And we need to talk about it.
Well, as I was going to say, you might think that, but will you engage with someone else to, let your side be known, to listen to what your counterpart has to say, and somewhere in between, maybe there's agreement or disagreement, but there's thoughts going back and forth, right?
Yeah, and let's not make it binary. We should be able to have this dialogue and end up in a place, and saying to you, that makes sense. I got to keep thinking about that. I've got to see where that's going to take me, as opposed to getting to a binary decision. Oh, I agree and I disagree. I don't want to disagree with you, or I want to have a conversation.
Okay.
I want to get somewhere with you.
All right. Well, we're getting to the end here. I just wanted to say, very interesting, and there's going to be more episodes of Pathology of an Incident. So what's your sensibility for, as we moving toward the end of 2024, what are you looking to do? What's on your agenda?
Well, it's interesting you asked that question, and I hope we have time for this. In 1999, I was asked that question at the university level. How do you expect the new century to be? And I said, and what's interesting about 1999 is also the day for the census.
Sure.
And people were saying, how the United States is going to be 20 years from now, and 40 and 50 years from now. And I said clearly that why are you worried about what's going to happen in 20 years from now? And I said this at graduate school classes and wrote about it. And when I was on panels, what makes you think they're going to be United States in 2020? United States 2020. I'm not that far away from being right. We had COVID. We've had 9/11. We've had the Civil War in front of us, and we want to deny that the Civil War is still going on. What makes you now we're even talking about some states seceding from the Union. What makes you think there's going to be another 10 years? Mike, is there somebody out there that's going to tell me that they can guarantee that the United States is not going to have to redo itself in formats outside of the form of the imagination that we have now? How long can this sickness last? So when you ask me about 20 and 30, it's even more dismal. We're having an election here where a good part of the election is to decide what happens in another part of the world, in Israel and the Middle East, which has always been a problem. I don't want to vote for that. And none of us know what the price of goods are. The lawsuit with the Hampshire Club and all these lawsuits and the fines that our companies are getting for oil spillage, that is inflation. You actually think that if a company gets and they have, a fine by the government for $50 million, that the company's going to pay that? Yeah, they're going to pay that, and they're going to pass it on to us.
That's for sure.
We don't know the price of what we're paying for. We are outpricing ourselves to the point that the dollar has no gold funding anymore. There is no tomorrow. Kids are figuring this out and having less children than they had before. And then I certainly bring in the boundaries, the immigration problem. We're asking the wrong questions. People are coming here now. Why, Mike, would people come here knowing that they're hated, they're going to be prejudiced, they're going to get arrested, they could die, they could get killed? Why come here under those circumstances? Why doesn't somebody ask, why are they coming here? It's not because of another opportunity, because the United States, as much as we're going after Russia for involving itself in our elections, there's not a country in Latin America, and especially Central America, that the United States has always affected those elections, and have taken off the wealth. They control the wealth. They control the fruits, and they control the avocados, and could control the grapes, and the fruits, and even domino sugar from Cuba and Puerto Rico, which is in Puerto Rico now, it's owned by a United States company. When are we going to figure out that if we're coming here, what is happening there? Because the United States has their hand dirty in the politics of what's happening in Colombia, what happened in Venezuela, and Chavez, and what happened in Nicaragua. Reagan even admitted that they wouldn't fund the Iraq War, and he ended up creating the drugs to make it profitable and using those drugs. It's a sickness. Ask now why they're coming here. Why? We don't want to come here. My mother didn't want to come here. You do stuff like that, and even coming here with my mother, we still were treated like, I'm literally a native. I'm technically a native. My father was born in Caracas. Caracas, last time I checked in Venezuela, is part of the Americas. We're all American natives, but we think, the Stars Bank, like it's United. Who the United States thinks it is?
Well, that's a whole question for
Yeah, that's another panel, which I'll be glad to go after.
Okay. All right. Louis Quiros, everybody. Pathology of an Incident. We'll be back to talk about this again soon. Thank you very much, Louis.
No, thank you, Michael. Thank you.